He got his suit back just in time. And no matter what happens in his life, he gets absolutely no respect. Would you welcome Rodney Dangerfield?
Johnny Carson remained the unbeatable host of The Tonight Show for 30 years, discussing interesting narratives and bringing whoever he thought was important to the discussion. As host, his job was to make his guests comfortable, but he did not hesitate to let anyone off the show for good, over the years. Carson popularized a list of people he would never have on his show again. It's surprising to find out how they make it to this list. In this video, we reveal the surprising list of celebrities Johnny Carson banned from The Tonight Show and the reasons behind it. But before we reveal the list of celebrities banned from The Tonight Show and the reasons for their fate, let's first do a background check of the notorious Johnny Carson and The Tonight Show. About Johnny Carson. John William Carson was born in Corning, Iowa, on October 23, 1925, to Ruth Elizabeth Carson and Homer Lloyd Carson, a power company manager. He was the second of 3 children, with an older sister, Catherine Carson Sewing, and a younger brother, Richard Carson. As a child, John lived in several towns in southwest Iowa, including Avoca, Clarinda, and Red Oak, before moving to Norfolk, Nebraska when he was 8. It was in Norfolk that he began to develop his talent for entertaining. After high school, John had his first encounter with Hollywood. He hitchhiked there but was arrested and fined $50 for impersonating a midshipman, a story that has become legendary, taking advantage of educational opportunities from the Navy. Johnny Carson attended the University of Nebraska, Lincoln. He joined the Phi Gamma Delta fraternity and continued entertaining there. Initially, he majored in journalism and planned to become a comedy writer, but he soon switched to speech and drama to become a radio performer. Carson's college thesis was titled, "How to Write Comedy for Radio." It included tape skits and jokes from popular radio shows, with Carson providing voiceover explanations of the comedic techniques. This unique project allowed him to graduate in just 3 years. In 1949, he earned a Bachelor of Arts in Radio and Speech with a minor in physics. After graduation, Carson began broadcasting in 1950 a 00 radio and television in Omaha. He quickly became the host of a morning television show called The Squirrel's Nest to supplement his income. Carson also served as master of ceremonies at local church dinners, often attended by the politicians and civic leaders he satirized on his show. The wife of one of the Omaha political figures that Carson spoofed owned stock in a radio station in Los Angeles in 1951. She referred Carson to her brother, who had influence in the emerging television market in Southern California. This led to Carson joining the CBS-owned Los Angeles television station Not Now KCBS-TV. From 1951 to 1953, Carson hosted a low-budget sketch comedy show called Carson Cellar on Not, which gained a faithful following. In 1955, Jack Benny invited Carson to appear on his show during the opening and closing segments. Johnny Carson hosted several shows besides Carson's Cellar, including the game show Earn Your Vacation 1954 and the CBS variety show The Johnny Carson Show from 1955 to 1956. He started as a guest panelist on the original To Tell the Truth in 1960 and became a regular panelist from 1961 to 1962. After his primetime show, The Johnny Carson Show, failed, he moved to New York City to host ABC TV's Who Do You Trust from 1957 to 1962. On this show, he met his future sidekick Ed McMahon. Despite initial doubts about moving to daytime television, Who Do You Trust was a hit. It allowed Carson to ad-lib and interview guests, showcasing his on-camera wit and making the show a daytime television sensation. NBC's Tonight Show was a late-night counterpart to its early morning show Today, beginning in 1954, with Steve Allen as host. When Allen moved on to primetime in 1957, Jack Paar took over, but he left in 1962. Carson's success on Who Do You Trust led NBC to offer him the hosting role for Tonight. Initially, he declined, fearing the challenge of interviewing celebrities for 105 minutes daily. After several other hosts, including Bob Newhart and Groucho Marx, turned down the job, Carson was convinced to sign on in early February 1962. Carson first discussed his new role on the February 11, 1962 episode of What's My Line. With 6 months left on his ABC contract, NBC used guest hosts including Merv Griffin, Art Link, Letter, and Jerry Lewis, until Carson could take over. Despite his initial doubts, Carson became the host of Tonight, which later became The Tonight Show on October 1, 1962. After a challenging first year, he overcame his fears, and his version of Tonight eventually did very well in the ratings. Initially produced at NBC's studios in New York City, the show later moved to California, with the program being videotaped in advance, and during the 1970s, fed live from Burbank to New York via satellite for editing. Keep watching to find out the celebrities who Johnny Carson banned from The Tonight Show. Number 1. Sylvester Stallone. Who would believe an icon like Sylvester Stallone would get kicked out of any show while Johnny Carson is full of wonders? Sylvester Stallone's portrayal of Rocky Balboa catapulted his career to incredible heights during the 1980s, bringing him to stardom. Stallone became a familiar face alongside Carson, promoting his projects and connecting with the host and audience. However, Stallone's appearances on the show suddenly ceased for reasons that remained somewhat mysterious. This unexpected exclusion from The Tonight Show marked a puzzling turn in Stallone's relationship with the program and its host. Despite his significant success and popularity during that era, he wasn't even invited to appear on Carson's final episodes of the show in 1992, which puzzled many fans. Soon after, rumors circulated suggesting Stallone had not fulfilled his commitments. It was said that the actor frequently failed to show up and canceled scheduled promotional appearances, which didn't sit well with Carson. Carson, already displeased with Stallone's perceived arrogance as his fame grew, took this matter seriously, permanently removed Stallone from his guest list, and then cut off all ties with the actor. Despite Stallone's absence from The Tonight Show, his career continues to thrive, with ongoing success in his acting career and more respect within the industry. Number 2. Frank Sinatra. Even Frank Sinatra was not spared. The renowned singer and actor known as Old Blue Eyes and chairman of the board was barred from appearing on The Tonight Show. Sinatra, a leader of the Rat Pack, was a sensation in acting and music during his time. His success naturally led him to entertain audiences on various platforms, including The Tonight Show alongside Johnny Carson. However, trouble brewed between Sinatra and Carson, according to reports. Carson felt unsettled by Sinatra's commanding presence and was careful about Sinatra's associations with organized crime figures. Carson therefore protected his turf, ensuring that Sinatra's appearances on his show were limited. It seems the feeling was mutual, as Sinatra also didn't seek a close friendship with Carson. Consequently, Sinatra hasn't been greatly affected by the restricted invitations over the years. Carson, on the other hand, maintained a preference for inviting musical talents and colleagues who shared a similar wholesome Midwestern background as himself. Before Sinatra ceased appearing on The Tonight Show, it was evident that the two of them were not Viking properly. This was seen in their short interactions and interviews. Sinatra's exclusion from The Tonight Show is proof of Carson's influence over the guest list and the dynamics that shaped his tenure as host in later years. Johnny Carson's co-host, Ed McMahon, recalled an incident involving Frank Sinatra that highlighted the tense relationship between the two. McMahon detailed the story in his book Here's Johnny, recounting a moment when he and Carson were at a piano bar in a Manhattan restaurant called Giles preparing for an impromptu musical session. Their plans were abruptly disrupted by Sinatra's unexpected arrival, which stunned everyone present due to Sinatra's revered status. Despite the solemn atmosphere, Carson broke the silence with a curse-filled outburst directed at Sinatra, expressing his frustration about Sinatra's timing. Carson reminded Sinatra that he was expected to appear at 10:30, clearly unimpressed by the interruption of their musical preparation. Number 3. Rodney Dangerfield. Rodney Dangerfield, the irreverent stand-up comedian known for his self-deprecating "I don't get no respect" catchphrase, had a rocky relationship with Johnny Carson and The Tonight Show. Despite the audience's clear admiration for him, Dangerfield felt a lack of enthusiasm from Carson himself. He often joked, "I took out a belly dancer. She told me I turned her stomach," reflecting his perpetual sense of being undervalued, a sensation that ironically mirrored his comedic persona. Dangerfield believed Carson failed to appreciate his popularity and unique comedic voice, dismissing the work ethic behind his craft. This perception led to occasional awkward interviews, contributing to the flow of Dangerfield's appearances during Carson's tenure. Though never explicitly banned, the intervals between his guest spots grew longer due to misunderstandings and Dangerfield's guarded suspicions about truly belonging in Carson's inner circle. Further friction reportedly arose from business matters. Dangerfield independently owned a prominent comedy club and sought to promote upcoming events during his guest appearances. This blending of personal projects with show appearances was not always welcomed by Carson's booking hierarchy. These cumulative tensions created a complex dynamic despite their mutual respect. While Dangerfield remained a fan favorite, his discomfort under Carson's gaze meant their rapport never matched the easy relationship Carson shared with his closest recurring guests. Number 4. Howie Mandel. Mandel, originally a budding comedian, faced dismissal during his early appearance on The Tonight Show, which is understandable given the clash in comedic styles. Canadian actor and comedian Howie Mandel found himself on Carson's blacklist for flimsy reasons. Unlike Dangerfield, the issue with Mandel was his style of humor. Mandel's energetic approach to comedy didn't sit well with Carson, who preferred a more controlled and consistent tone for his show. This clash of comedic styles led to Carson barring Mandel from returning to The Tonight Show. When Howie Mandel appeared as a guest on The Tonight Show in 1979, he brought a comedic style that clashed with Johnny Carson's preferences. Mandel attempted a joke involving a blown-up glove stuck to his head, but Carson quickly dismissed the prop before Mandel could deliver the punchline, showing his lack of amusement. This interaction highlighted the disparity in their comedic sensibilities. Carson's dominance over the show's tone and guest interactions was evident. Like many others, Mandel had to navigate Carson's expectations and preferences while on the air. The incident underscored the importance of aligning with Carson's comedic tastes to gain his approval and ensure a successful appearance on The Tonight Show. Those who deviated from Carson's preferred style risked failing to impress and potentially being embarrassed or excluded from future invitations. Mandel's exclusion again highlighted Carson's significant influence over the show's guest list and the overall tone he wished to maintain. Despite the setback on The Tonight Show, Howie Mandel achieved significant commercial success, particularly with roles in movies such as Gremlins and other ventures. Later in his career, his ability to adapt and succeed outside the confines of Carson's show demonstrated his resilience and versatility as a performer. In fact, Howie Mandel's career took a resilient turn when he became the prominent host of CNBC's game show, Deal or No Deal. Number 5. Kathleen Turner. Kathleen Turner, a multi-award winner with 2 Golden Globes, a Grammy, and 2 Tony Awards, was the next victim on the ban list. Turner rose to fame as Maddie Walker in the 1981 neo-noir film Body Heat, which branded her as a sex symbol. Throughout the decade, with her rising popularity, Turner was in demand on many TV shows and made several appearances on The Tonight Show starring Johnny Carson, according to some. Kathleen Turner's diva-like attitude contributed significantly to her rejection by Johnny Carson. Carson, known for his conversational style and desire for a smooth show, found her demeanor during one appearance to be off-putting. It's also reported that Turner didn't see the importance of late-night talk shows, which Carson took offense to, given that this was his main line of work. This perceived slight led Carson to stop inviting her back to the show. Consequently, Turner's absence from The Tonight Show coincided with a decrease in her overall popularity. However, Turner's story didn't end there. Her immense talent and dedication to her craft eventually led her to Broadway, where she found renewed success. Shifting her focus to stage performances, she rebuilt her career and gained critical acclaim in the theater world. Number 6. Dana Carvey. Renowned for his hypersensitiveness, syncopated impressions, and masterful mimicry, Dana Carvey became an audience favorite on Saturday Night Live SNL during his tenure from 1986 to 1993. Thanks to beloved original characters like the Church Lady and his pitch-perfect parodies of public figures from George Bush to Johnny Carson, Carvey quickly established himself as a rising talent poised to dominate the next decade of comedy, capitalizing on late-night publicity opportunities. Carvey made multiple appearances on The Tonight Show. In 1991, at the height of his fame, he returned to Carson's show to promote the Wayne's World movie, a silver screen adaptation of the recurring SNL skit that had crystallized his most identifiable character at that cultural moment. However, rather than exclusively discussing the film or reprising fan-favorite sketch material, Carvey chose to perform uncanny impressions of Carson and other talk show figures. While intended as self-referential humor from one consummate mimic to another, Carson apparently cringed at being the center of the joke on his own program. Accustomed to tightly controlling the tone and tenor of his show, Carson found the gentle ribbing of its storied figurehead crossing unseen fault lines. As a result, Carson immediately placed Carvey on a quietly enforced blacklist, permanently closing the door on this crossover comedy prince who had been groomed to inherit the comedy throne. Number 7. Sandra Bernhard. Sandra Bernhard was born on June 6, 1955 in Flint, Michigan, to Jeanette and Jerome Bernhardt, a proctologist. She was raised as a conservative Jew. Bernhardt has 3 older brothers, Dan, David, and Mark. When she was 10, her family moved to Arizona, where she attended Saguaro High School in Scottsdale, graduating in 1973. The same year, she traveled to Israel and spent 7 months at Kibbutz Kar Menichim with her friend Daniel Chick. She later returned to Israel. During the Yom Kippur War, Bernhardt's career took off as she became a regular at the Comedy Store. Her comedic talent led to a role as a supporting player on The Richard Pryor Show in 1977, followed by guest appearances on evening talk shows. Her breakthrough came in 1981, when Martin Scorsese cast her as the stalker kidnapper Masha in the film The King of Comedy. This role earned her the National Society of Film Critics Award for Best Supporting Actress. Bernhard further solidified her presence in comedy, with 28 appearances on David Letterman's NBC program Late Night with David Letterman starting in 1983. Sandra Bernhard first appeared on The Tonight Show in the 1970s and became known for her bold stand-up comedy and caustic commentary. Bernhard was a frequent guest in the 1980s, able to keep up with Carson's flow. However, in 1988, she suddenly stopped being booked. Many speculated it was because her edgy skits pushed Carson's boundaries, something he didn't appreciate. In case you didn't know, Carson's influence on the show was almost absolute. If he didn't like you, you were essentially off the roster. Although Bernhard wasn't officially banned, she was never invited back, confirming suspicions that she was no longer welcome. Others believed Carson's dislike stemmed from her mentioning politics during her appearances, which he preferred to avoid. Carson aimed to keep the show lighthearted and found political discussions could sour the mood. Number 8. Bob Hope. Not even British-born comedian Bob Hope was immune from being banned from The Tonight Show. The multi-talented actor and comedian Bob Hope enjoyed a remarkable career spanning decades, living to the impressive age of 100. However, his relationship with Johnny Carson went bad due to Hope's failing memory, a common issue in old age that didn't deter the comedian from continuing to perform. Hope's incident with Carson occurred when he was scheduled to appear on The Tonight Show. Before the show, Hope sent Carson a specific list of questions that he insisted Carson ask him in a strict order. This scripted approach posed a challenge for Carson, known for his spontaneous wit and ad-lib skills. Being restricted to Hope's prepared questions limited Carson's ability to inject humor and commentary, which frustrated him deeply. Johnny Carson, who was NBC's leading moneymaker at the time, was accustomed to a more fluid and engaging style on his show. Being constrained by Hope's scripted format clashed with Carson's preference for lively, spontaneous conversations. According to Andrew Nichols, Carson's former co-head writer, Hope's reliance on prepared material and his inability to engage in genuine dialogue left Carson feeling exhausted. Ultimately, Hope never returned to The Tonight Show studio again, as Carson made it clear he no longer wished to have him as a guest. This underscored Carson's preference for guests who could engage in spontaneous, meaningful conversations, reflecting his own curiosity and quick thinking on a variety of subjects. Richard Zinn's book, Hope Entertainer of the Century, revealed that Bob Hope was actually Johnny Carson's least favorite guest. While Hope often delighted the public with his comedic routines, including his signature quick exit, Carson grew weary of his predictable routines and other aspects of his persona. Despite Carson's deep respect for Hope's stature in the entertainment industry, as noted by The Tonight Show producer Peter Lasalle, Carson didn't share the same admiration for Hope's work. Adding to Carson's frustration was Hope's tendency to just go off The Tonight Show whenever he had something to promote. This practice irked Carson, contributing to his decision to unofficially ban Hope from appearing on the show. Number 9. Wayne Newton. Despite starting out with a friendly relationship and sharing a similar circle of friends, including being hailed as Mr. Entertainment, Newton and Carson's feud persisted for decades behind closed doors. Wayne Newton, celebrated as a legendary singing icon and pop star, achieved significant commercial success, while Johnny Carson was renowned as the king of late night, synonymous with The Tonight Show. Their initial relationship led to Newton making multiple appearances on the show. However, their ongoing feud eventually ended. Newton's guest spots on The Tonight Show. The trouble between Johnny Carson and Wayne Newton stands out as the most intense on today's list, involving insults and even legal actions. With tensions escalating to the brink of physical confrontation, the conflict began when Carson started joking about Newton's physical appearance, particularly questioning his masculinity. What started as light teasing soon turned into persistent mockery, with Carson enlisting other comedians to join in. Newton attempted to resolve the issue privately, spending nearly 6 months trying to persuade Carson to stop the jokes. However, the mockery continued unabated. He was very angry with me and started jokes on his show, and having other comedians join in with those jokes about my lack of manhood, I guess, is the best way to say it. Newton recounted in an interview with the Review-Journal. Newton felt there was no justification for the jokes, as they were entirely unfounded. Frustrated with Carson's mean-spirited humor, Newton publicly confronted him on national television, but this failed to halt the jokes. In a bold move, Newton stormed into NBC studios while Carson was in a meeting with producer Fred de Cordova, threatening physical violence if the mockery persisted. Carson downplayed the confrontation, but tensions remained high. The climax of their feud came when Newton purchased the Aladdin Hotel in 1980, a property Carson had long coveted. This acquisition further inflamed their animosity. Their dispute became so bitter that anyone associated with Newton, including close friends, was banned from The Tonight Show. Number 10. Lola Falana. Yes, you heard correctly. Even the American singer Lola Falana found herself unwelcome on The Tonight Show. Born Latha Elaine Falana, a prominent figure in American TV during the 1970s, she was admired for her beauty and charming personality. Back then, she was ubiquitous on variety shows and a frequent guest on The Tonight Show. However, one day her manager publicly announced that Falana, known for her role in The Love Boat, was no longer invited to appear. The reason behind this exclusion was reportedly her close association with Wayne Newton, although Falana herself never addressed this publicly. Many believe the decision was linked to Johnny Carson's ongoing feud with Newton, which was widely covered at the time. An article in the Lexington Herald from February 4, 1981, discussed this incident, occurring at the peak of Carson and Newton's animosity. It seemed Carson harbored lingering resentment over Newton's acquisition of the Aladdin Hotel, which further strained their relationship. Falana did not let the ban affect her career and continued to make bold strides in the industry. In 1995, Falana collaborated with Catholic artist Joseph Lee Hooker to record the song Don't Cry Mary. Since retiring from performing, she has dedicated her time to touring the country, spreading messages of hope and spirituality. When not on tour, she leads a quiet life in Las Vegas, focusing on the Lambs of God ministry, an apostolate she founded. The ministry's primary mission is to assist children orphaned in sub-Saharan Africa working. closely with the organization Save Sub-Saharan Orphans. Falana's final documented musical performance occurred in 1997 at Wayne Newton's Theater in Branson, Missouri, between 1965 and 1968. Lola Falana had an affair with her mentor at the time, Sammy Davis Jr., which became public knowledge after Davis confessed it to his then-wife Mae Britt. This revelation ultimately led to their divorce in 1968. In 1970, Falana married Feliciano Butch Tavares Jr., one of the 5 brothers from the popular R&B and soul vocal band Tavares. However, their marriage ended in divorce in 1975. This is proof that getting banned from the Johnny Carson show is no reason to feel bad or lose your career streak. Number 11. Rich Little. Little was born in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada, the second of 3 sons. His father, Lawrence Peniston Little, was a surgeon who served in the Royal Canadian Naval Volunteer Reserve during World War II. He later worked for the Department of Veterans Affairs until he passed away in 1959. His mother, Elizabeth Maudney Wilson, was a homemaker. He is a third-generation Canadian with English ancestry from his father and Irish ancestry from his mother. On his maternal side, he is descended from John Wilson, who served as Speaker of the 5th Parliament of Upper Canada in the 1820 Sacourses, his paternal great-grandfather. William Carruthers Little was a member of Parliament in the Canadian House of Commons from 1867 to 1881. Little attended the Lisgar Collegiate Institute. In his early teens, he teamed up with Jeff Scott, another aspiring impressionist who later became a politician, focusing on mimicking Canadian politicians like Prime Minister John Defend Baker and Ottawa Mayor Charlotte Whitten. Interestingly, if there was one Hollywood figure Johnny Carson couldn't tolerate, it was celebrity impersonator Rich Little. Carson's disdain for Little grew over time, despite Little making numerous appearances on The Tonight Show earlier in his career. Rich Little's impressions of figures like Richard Nixon and Jimmy Stewart were a hit with fans and viewers of The Tonight Show, earning him repeated invitations to the set. However, his tenure as a regular guest was cut short after a guest appearance in 1976, when he decided to impersonate Johnny Carson without prior notice. While some celebrities might have taken this in stride, Carson, known for his sensitivity, took it differently. Many believe this incident led to Little being banned from the show. In a 2021 interview with Sunday Morning, Little reflected on the situation, admitting uncertainty about why he was barred. "I said something that rubbed somebody the wrong way, or Johnny got tired of me imitating him," Little speculated. Despite his efforts to understand, he never received a clear explanation. Although Little never returned to The Tonight Show, he eventually reconciled with Johnny Carson. Years later, during a chance encounter at a Malibu restaurant, Carson approached Little's table inquiring if he still did impersonations of him. Little confirmed he did and noted the audience's continued enjoyment of his Carson impression, considering it one of his best. This encounter marked a peaceful resolution between the two comedic talents. As for Carson, he wondered if the public had forgotten about him since he had retired from hosting the show. However, Little reassured him that he remained popular and intended to continue impersonating the talk show host. Number 12. Joan Rivers. Joan Rivers was banned because she had a disagreement with Johnny Carson. Their disagreement is perhaps the most notorious among those listed here. Joan Rivers, a pioneering woman in comedy, rose to prominence through reality series like The Apprentice and Fashion Police, where she critiqued celebrities' fashion choices. Entering such a demanding industry as a woman was challenging, and Rivers navigated it cautiously. In the 1950s, she was among the few women pursuing careers in stand-up comedy when Johnny Carson was hosting. Rivers first appeared on NBC's The Tonight Show in 1965. It was her second appearance, and she performed well enough to be hired as a writer for the show. Over time, Rivers climbed the ranks to become a guest host, benefiting from her solid comedic rapport with Carson there. Professional relationship seemed ideal until it took a bad shape in the mid-1980s, and Joan Rivers was banned from future appearances on The Tonight Show by Johnny Carson. Coincidentally, Rivers had recently secured her own late-night show on Fox titled The Late Show with Joan Rivers. However, Carson was displeased because Rivers hadn't informed him about her new job. Years later, Rivers addressed this issue in an essay for The Hollywood Reporter, revealing that she had called Carson first to share her news, but was met with a cold response. Carson remained unforgiving despite her attempts to reconcile whenever they crossed paths in restaurants. Rivers speculated that Carson's resentment stemmed from her being a woman who dared to challenge him professionally. In her own words, "I think he really felt because I was a woman that I just was his, that I wouldn't leave him. I know this sounds very warped, but I don't understand what was going on. So what do you think about Johnny Carson and his bands? Let us know in the comment section. Thank you for watching this video. We hope you found it interesting. Tap on the link on your screen to catch up on your favorite celebrity stories. See you there.